Welcome to Wingin It With Wingo with your host, Derek Wingo. I'm super excited for this special guest, former NFL wide receiver and Florida Gator, three-time SEC champ, Chris Doering. Chris, so thank you for coming on today with me for a little bit.
Yeah, man, it's good to be with you, and we've been trying to connect for a while on here. I'm proud of all the work you've done, and that open had, you're like Forrest Gump with all the different things you did out there. The one thing it didn't include was your time with me at the mortgage company, man. My intern. I thought you would have been a great mortgage guy, but you're doing well in so many other things, and I'm so proud of you, bro.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I'll have to go back and find some footage. But yeah, I kind of wanted to start it off by just throwing it way back, right? Born in Gainesville, got to be a walk-on originally at the University of Florida, coach under Steve Spurrier. Kind of what was that like, just being a part of that era and then winning 3 SEC titles?
Yeah, let's go back to the walk-on portion of it because, I went to school at PK Young. I tell everybody I had the greatest senior year in the history of senior years. I was all-state in football, baseball, basketball. We won the state basketball tournament. I was the MVP of that. I got to be in the musical theater production of Guys and Dolls. So I did everything, and I thought that my resume was enough to get a scholarship in Florida. Not only was that not the case, I never got an offer from anywhere else, which I think in hindsight – was a blessing because rather than going somewhere else, I stayed home and went to the school that I was passionate about, that I was invested in since I was 5 years old. But at the end of the day, I was always embarrassed by being a walk-on. I remember my redshirt freshman year, they were doing kind of a profile of the different position groups, and they were talking about the receivers. And they mentioned lanky walk-on Chris Doering is what it was. And so I just was always kind of turned off by that. And then right before my sophomore year, I was given a scholarship. And then after that, it became former walk-on Chris Doering. So I could never really shed that title. But at the end of the day, it really was the best thing that could have happened for me because it taught me a work ethic. It taught me to believe in myself. It taught me, that sometimes the people that are supposed to be the ones that can't miss often do, and vice versa. And that served me very well in my post-playing days as well.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's just an amazing story to be able to go back to. And, I relate it now looking at a guy like Fernando Mendoza, right? Coming out of down at Columbus High School, not having many offers, being able to get to a pedestal like that. And, someone like you being able to work your way up and then eventually go on to have a successful career in the NFL as well. So I kind of wanted to ask you, right, the difference between college and NFL. Obviously, things look a little bit different nowadays, but back then, just being able to be involved in that era in college football to what it was in the NFL.
Yeah, I would say this, Derek. Like the jump for me going from 2A PK Young to playing in the SEC was a lot greater than it was going from the SEC to the NFL because a lot of the guys I was playing against on Sundays were guys I played against on Saturdays back in the SEC. So, obviously the pass rush is faster. You got to get in and out of your breaks. The windows are smaller. You got to be able to understand how to use your body to catch the ball in traffic. But I think, now the biggest thing is the business of football and how much the college game looks like the NFL game. In fact, the NFL, obviously much more regulated, much more structured. We're still trying to figure things out in the college world right now. But I think one of the things that I was always aware of, in the NFL was, some guys are making, what I would make in a week. And everybody's worried about that dynamic kind of occurring in college. You could speak to it better than I can, but I never thought it made much of a difference until recently with the leaked numbers at Ole Miss that somebody probably from LSU helped get out there. But I think that's caught the first real rift that I can remember publicly being aware of.
Yeah, and it's crazy to look at because it's something, I can say from experience. Obviously, it was different back then. But your overall kind of opinion, just on things on NIL, right, transfer portal, being able to go after certain contracts. I look at it almost as if, the college football world is starting to try and model the NFL, having rev share, having, third-party deals, having agents and all these people that are involved in negotiation and things like that. What's your kind of perspective on just, understanding and navigating that way through, certain negotiation deals and just the transfer portal as a whole?
Yeah, I was actually just talking about this earlier, again, going back to my story, lifelong Gainesville resident, Gator fan, the son of 2 Florida graduates. I never could have imagined leaving, even with the success that I had and having an opportunity maybe to go elsewhere. I couldn't imagine putting a different jersey on. Again, you could speak to this better than I can, having had teammates that left and like we would have completely disowned any teammate that decided to leave. But we had Thomas Houck on the other day on our show. I asked him about Denzel Aberdeen, who's now at Kentucky, and he's like, yeah, he's still in our group message. We still talk with him and all. Like, it's funny how different you guys are than what we were back in the day. But when you see a guy like Jack Pyburn that grew up a Gator fan in Jacksonville and decides to go elsewhere, understanding the business aspect of football, I think it speaks to how far we've come and how much the game has changed. Some of it good and some of it bad. I believe me, I'm jealous as hell of what you guys were able to make, and I think I probably would have done pretty well with some NIL opportunities back in the day. But it's the pendulum swung completely in the favor of the NCAA and the institutions to now the players having a lot of control. I think it needs to be somewhere in the middle, and sustainability is important. I think, Derek, the thing that stood out to me 2 summers ago, we were at SEC Media Days, and we were talking about the fan base being disenchanted with the congressional settlement, what was going on there, not really being a fan of the transfer portal, NIL stuff. Then we kicked the ball off, and we have the greatest season we've ever had. And then this year, one up last year. So all the stuff around the game of college football is messed up, but the product on the field and the parity that exists now, I think has gotten – look, when Indiana's winning the national championship, like I went to the Rose Bowl to cover that game out in Pasadena. It was 75% Indiana fans. And so I think it's good for college football to have other fan bases involved in meaningful games that I think start, as early as like middle October.
Yeah, and that's insane. I think it provides a lot of value to people that, not only just, earning money and be able to do other things and monetize yourself, but, taking care of your family and setting things up. I always talk about it as, these younger kids being able to grow up a lot faster, right? Understanding how to pay taxes and all these certain things that we've always spoke about. So I think there definitely is the positive side. I'm excited to kind of see where it goes. We talked a little bit earlier about it, but I got to ask your opinion on Jon Sumrall. I've had a great conversations with him. I'm fired up about this guy. When I watched that first, press conference of him, I was ready to go back and find another year of eligibility. So I know you're pretty close with him. You've had a few conversations, just kind of wanted to get where you're at.
Yeah, I've obviously, kind of followed him throughout his playing career and coaching career, and honestly didn't know a ton about him until it became evident that was the guy that Florida was targeting. And then after he was named the head coach, like that Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, when the news came out that Florida was pivoting away from Lane Kiffin, the amount of negativity and the backlash from Florida fans was significant. And then 48 hours later, by Sunday, when they got a chance to see him in front of a microphone and get to hear a little bit more about him, things turned 180 degrees. And that day, I got texts from guys that played with him in high school. Cash Daniel, who played for him at Kentucky, texted me and told me what a great one we were getting. Everybody that's ever been around this guy speaks about how authentic he is and the type of coach he is. I had a chance to sit courtside for the Florida LSU game the other day. I'm watching Todd Golden going nuts down there. And I think a lot of people, Florida fans, got a little bit upset with the lack of energy and emotion that was shown by Coach Napier. That's who he was. But this guy, to me, seems like he's much more in line with what Coach Golden is. And I know you talked to some guys that were in that initial player introductory meeting with Sumrall, more than a few F-bombs being dropped. And I think that, you need a little bit of that in the locker room. So I'm excited to see not only the energy that he's bringing, but I think the coaching staff that he put together, bringing Phil Troutwine back, bringing Bam Hartman back, integrating, some experienced coaches from around, having Brad White, who I think is a tremendous defensive mind who's been in this league for a long time, and being able to retain as many of the core players on the roster. I mean, it speaks to, again, authenticity. You can't fake being authentic. And I think people sense that. And I feel like we have that in Jon Sumrall.
Yeah, absolutely. I go back to, all the way back to Dan Mullen, who I was recruited by. And then I look at Coach Napier, obviously 2 tremendous coaches, and I was blessed to be able to have them in my journey, but 2 completely different types of coaches, right? One who's fired up, one who's a little bit more laid back and likes to have a plan of attack. So when I looked at Coach Sumrall and got to have a conversation with him, his energy, the second he walks in the door, you can right away see it, and I'm excited. Got to ask you as well, right, SEC Network, you've been doing that for a long time. Obviously, you look at the game different than most people. You're able to analyze it. I'm sure you're still looking at the way DBs are covering wide receivers and what would I would do if he's inside or outside leverage. What is that like, being on set with Peter Burns, up there and just be able to, take all the analysts and go through it all and watching these games?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned watching the games the other night with that Indiana-Miami game. I was just hoping for a defensive holding or pass interference call. I mean, what are we doing out there? Absolutely accosting those receivers. But in watching games, it's not as much on the field that I look at differently. And you and I have talked a lot about broadcasting stuff before. I watch broadcasts differently. I watch what announcers say and how they say it and what they decide to feature. It really has kind of ruined, in a way, how I consume football on television. Now, with that being said, I love the evolution of the sport. You go back and look, I played for Coach Spurrier, one of the guys that has his fingerprints all over the way that college football is played offensively now. We were spreading it out, throwing it around long before everybody else was. So I'm really proud to have been a part of that and what that did to change this league and college football in general. But, man, the defensive coverages, you go back and look at Indiana, rarely do they bring more than 4, but what they do with their simulated pressures and the confusion they create for offensive linemen and backs and protection, it really is. It's become a full-time job. It's not you don't get to see the straight cover 2, cover 3, cover 1 stuff anymore. The pattern matching and everything else defenses are doing make it really difficult to get a beat on it from a quarterback and a receiver perspective.
Yeah, and it was cool to see a guy like D'Angelo Pons, right, who's a little bit undersized, but is an absolute dog when it comes to, his explosiveness off the ground, his technique, getting after it. So I would love to see that matchup with you lined up against him. Kind of
in my mind, it's still I could still do it at 52. I'm not sure my body would react very well, but
you have a few plays or a drive left in you.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, man. Then I'd probably get out there and tear my hamstring or something. So I'm gonna just, in my mind, continue to believe I can do it.
All right. So obviously going through this journey, being a walk-on originally, you had to have a favorite wide receiver coming in that you've kind of always looked up or wanted to model your game on after. Who that might be?
Yeah, Chris Collinsworth was the guy, man. I have pictures with him dating back to being 5 and 6 years old on Florida Field at Florida Fan Photo Day. This was a guy, let's be honest, back then there wasn't a whole lot of white wide receivers to be able to look up to. So that was kind of the guy. We've seen a lot more of the diversity at the receiver position these days. But he was one that I identified with, followed him all the way through his career at Cincinnati, and then ironically into the broadcast booth, where I think he's one of the best around, obviously, getting to do what he does. But, I love watching him. And, again, go back to authenticity. He calls the game very authentically, as like you're sitting around watching it with your boys. But he's been a great role model for me and somebody that I've always kind of looked up to and have had a relationship with. And this is how old I am, Wingo. When I broke the SEC career touchdown reception record, I got a telegram from Chris Collinsworth that said, "Hey, I thought you were trying to be like me. You better start dropping more of them." And it was just such a cool thing. I don't think anybody would even know what a telegram is now, but to hear something like that from your it's definitely antiquated for sure. But again, to have somebody that I looked up to, so that's what's cool to me, man. These guys, you probably can identify with this, but those teams in the 80s, those were my heroes, man. We're getting to watch Neil Anderson and John L. Williams and Ricky Nattiel and Collinsworth and on to Emmitt Smith. Like, when I'm in a room with all these Gator greats, even though people on the outside may look at me in the same group, I'm like a little boy in awe, getting a chance to see my heroes still. I'm 52 years old, and I look at these guys as being guys that I've always looked up to.
That's just amazing. And then you had the chance to win, 3 SEC titles, and that's huge. Was there a moment through one of those seasons that you wish that you could have kind of, maybe a game or a play that you wish you kind of could have went back and redone or had to redo?
Oh, man. The game I'd like to redo would be my last one, which was the national championship game against Nebraska. Didn't go the way we thought. We're still the only team in Florida football history to go undefeated, win the SEC championship game. And so to not have finished it the right way, I thought it was going to be a storybook ending. That Tommy Frazier, Lawrence Phillips team was really, really good, one of the best of all time. So I would like to have a chance to do that one over again. But, man, just so many great moments. And to be a part of the run-up of the program the way that we were. There was a time in the beginning of my career there, 91, 92, where we were considered – they nicknamed us roadkill because we'd leave the swamp and have a trouble winning on the road. And I think it's an awesome analogy about life is like how sometimes you have to fail in order to figure out how to do things. We struggled on the road and then figured that out. our first trip to the Sugar Bowl in '91, we get blown out by Jerome Bettis and the Notre Dame folks. Then we go back there in '93 and beat West Virginia 41-7. Our first trip to the SEC championship game, that Antonio Langham interception, we lose in '92, and then we win 4 straight as a program. So I think so much of football and life has to do with being in the moment, experiencing it, and then coming back and building it, getting better from it. Certainly the '96 team learned from our loss in that '95 national championship game, and we're able to take advantage of it the next year against Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, I know you wish you could have been there for one extra year to have that one back. That would have been
it hurts still to this day, man. It hurts that we came up short, and even though I was cheering for those guys and was there in New Orleans, a little jealous watching all my former teammates getting to win it without me.
Yeah, most definitely. So obviously you get to watch all these matchups now on a day-to-day basis every Saturday. I hear you have, well, I know you have a little bet going on with Peter Burns when LSU comes down and to play Florida. So I've seen the crazy outfits that you come in the studio with. And obviously lately in the past, you've been the one that's lost the bet. So you've what goes behind all that with you and PB kind of making those?
One thing I like to remind PB about, first and foremost, we don't take points. There's no as a player. Now, again, I remind him all the time, I'm the player. You're just a fan. You never went, you never played at LSU. You're a golfer that played at St. Mary's College. So don't talk to me about, the what it's like to be an athlete, because golf, that doesn't count. Secondly, we in the locker rooms, in the NFL, we don't take points. You take your team, you back your team regardless of them being good or bad. And there's been years when we've been big underdogs and lost. There's been years when we were favorites and lost. And so I think it's gained I've gotten a little bit of credit from LSU fans for showing up every year with that spirit that this year is going to be our year. We finally got one 2 years ago, which was nice. But, man, maybe the most embarrassing was when we lost LSU in the College World Series. The bet was on our way to SEC Media Days in Nashville, we had to wear the full baseball uniform. So LSU sent me the hat, the pants, the jersey, all the way down to the stirrups. I'm walking through, and literally, everybody's staring at me from the Gainesville airport through Charlotte to Nashville. I'm getting off the plane in Nashville, and the stewardess go, "Hey, we're not supposed to talk to you guys, but I just wanted to wish you well. Are you on your way to a game?" I think they were thinking like this was high school where we're dressing at our locker room and riding on the bus. So it was a fun, kind of humiliating bet to pay off. But I hate the fact that we're not playing LSU next year, because that bet, at least for a little bit, takes a hiatus.
Yeah, most definitely. But it's so amazing to kind of see those things, and obviously shows, being a man of your word, getting it done. So I kind of wanted to give you a chance to, give a little bit of advice to those people who may be walk-ons now, right? Or may not be on the pedestal that they want to be on in the future and kind of chasing their dreams. Obviously, you're somebody that went through it, did it at a high level, and were able to achieve those goals. So I want to kind of just give you a chance to, give a little bit of, not only just motivation, but advice to everyone out there that, might be in the same boat.
I'll go back to kind of what I said before. It wasn't the path that I wanted, but it was the best possible path for me, because, again, the amount of energy that I poured into achieving that goal, when I finally got that scholarship, when I got a chance to play, I was never going to let up because of how much sacrifice it took to get there. So I think anytime you invest in something emotionally and with all your effort, it makes it way more difficult to quit. And I think when you actually achieve something that you poured that much energy and time into, it also feels that much more fulfilling. So I encourage, anytime I get a chance to talk to kids or younger athletes, people in general, just believe in yourself, man. It doesn't matter what anybody else tells you. They told me I was too slow, too skinny, too white. I wouldn't listen to any of that stuff, man. I was passionate about playing football for the Gators, and I was going to do everything it took to give myself that opportunity. And so grateful to have played for a coach like Coach Spurrier. You know this, Wingo. Like, there's a lot of coaches that would not give walk-ons the same opportunity that a scholarship guy gets. It's almost like, admitting that they made a recruiting mistake. But for Coach Spurrier, all he ever wanted was guys that would play the way they were coached, and to have that opportunity. Outside of my parents, there's not a more influential person in my entire life, and just so grateful for the lessons that he's taught me and the opportunities that he's provided.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really appreciate you not only just right for coming on today, but for everything that you've done, whether or not it's it was on the field, just being an inspiration to other people, and then just being able to share on SEC Network and the other side of football. So I really appreciate you for taking the time to kind of chop it up.
Thanks, and I'll say this to close. Yeah, people ask me all the time, man, do you want to keep moving up and doing more with ESPN? And yeah, sure, I'd love to have some opportunity, but I love covering the SEC. I love covering the 16 teams that I know the most about, that I'm invested in as a fan from 5 years old on, that I played in this league. And it's just such a dream job. I'm so fortunate to have gotten to live out the dream. All I ever wanted to do as a kid was play football for the Gators and play in the NFL, and I got a chance to do that. Now I get to cover the SEC, so I feel like I'm cheating a little bit to get a chance to live out all these dreams, but just finished my 11th season with ESPN and the SEC Network. And man, it just keeps getting better and better. So I'm so grateful for that. And the fans that tune in, man, everybody that gets done with their SEC Saturday watches our show on Saturday night. It's just an honor to be able to wrap things up for our fan base.
Heck yeah, man. That's amazing. SEC is something special. SEC is just, it's built different over there. And
it's more, right?
It means more. So it's definitely thrilling to be able to be a part of that. So I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you. And I'll go back to what I said before, man. So proud of you. To give your listeners a little bit of the backstory. I met you early on when you came in with my daughter the same year back in 2020, I guess.
2020, yeah, during COVID.
Been able to follow your career and get a chance to work with you, and just what you've done to carve out a niche for yourself and take advantage of opportunities on your side is very impressive, man. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.